Race fans, it's time to buckle in and listen to the fastest hour in racing radio. Your driver is a multi-time NASCAR winner and Hall of Famer Mark Martin. We cover racing, grassroots, history, we bench race, we talk life, and most importantly, we smash the loud pedal. It's time to turn some laps on the Mark Martin Podcast.
Episode 30 of the Mark Martin Podcast, and the year is going to be a big one, 1989. But before we get to the podcast, make sure to hit up the website markmartinpod.com and get all of the old episodes. Make sure to subscribe and listen. Give us that 5-star rating on your favorite podcast player. And also connect on social media at markmartinpod. But Mark, 1989, a huge year, a lot of good stories to come from this year.
Yeah, sort of leading out of 88 and into 89, we had built a foundation, built up a cars, had, a stable of race cars at that point. The tractor and trailer was all set. And we had a lot of experience, behind us. And as I told you, we started numbering the cars from JR1 to 10. JR10 was our first Laughlin car, Laughlin chassis. And that was an important move. We started, I think, 89 off with rear steer cars, banjo cars, but with JR10 in the stable as well. We had a good, solid base of great employees there at our shop in Liberty, just outside of Greensboro. Steve and Robin had really rounded up some really great people to work there in the shop. And so it was our plan to hit the ground in 89 running. Where in 1988, we kind of hit the ground stumbling because, we had so much to do, so much to build. So we planned out, and Steve Meal or Robin, either one could probably tell you, but what the number was. I had heard a number of 20-something tests that we did. But we tested pretty much the first half of the season. We tested at every racetrack before we went there. And, we were on to good spring setups, split spring setups. We were learning how to really make the cars stay on the tires much better for the longer runs. And we were just fast. We were fast. Now, we did have to deal with a new body style. The 89 Thunderbird really had some serious low quarter panels on it. But the car still ran pretty darn good. And the way the rules were back then is you had a template, long template that went from the front of the hood all the way across the back of the deck lid. And, so it made the silhouette of the car be within a half inch, of a street car. So, of course, we took that half inch at the back of the roof, where the roof and the windshield, rear window, meet. That's where we would make it miss a half inch right there. And but they had a roof height 10 inches back from the front windshield on the roof, had to be a minimum of 50.5 inches. And they had a nose height which governed the nose of the car off the ground, and that was 27 inches. And if you built a car with the roof height at 50.5 or 5/8, and a nose height of 27 inches, it put the quarter panels about 32 or 33 inches, probably 33 inches off the ground. in later years, they finally made a rule of a maximum of 35 and 36 because, we were getting the backs of the cars up higher. But in 1989, we hadn't figured out what to do in order to get the quarters up. So the quarters were really low on the car. So, it didn't make spectacular downforce by any means. Matter of fact, the cars were, around zero in the front at best, with the grill open. Probably even most of the cars had some lift in the front in race trim and had, maybe 150 or 200 pounds of downforce on the back. So as we go forward in these podcasts, I will be talking more and more and more about how we eventually start making downforce with these bodies. But that's where we started off, following the rules, and so the car was probably slightly aerodynamically challenged, certainly as compared to the 88 T-Bird. But gosh, we were fast. We wound up sitting on 6 poles, winning the most poles of anybody, and winning that pole award for the 89 season. We were really fast, had a good bunch of guys at the shop and a great road crew, and we were having fun now because we're hauling ass. We're right up front. Seemed to run second all the time though. It seemed like we'd run good, but Earnhardt would beat us. We had an epic battle with Earnhardt at Dover, where I could get underneath Dale, but I couldn't make it stick. It would spin the rear tires up off the corner, leaving black marks off the corner, and it reran lap after lap after lap after lap like that. And I ran second to him in the end. We would be quicker than him on the long run, but he was faster on the short runs, on the takeoffs, and would get out there on me. And by the time I'd catch him and start really working him over, we'd wind up with another caution. So I remember running second to him in both Darlington races, in the Southern 500 and the Trans-South 400, both at Darlington. And it just seemed like we ran second 6 times. So every week, it just started getting kind of old. Every week when you'd unload on Friday, the media would all come up. When you gonna win? When you gonna win? Man, I don't know when I'm gonna win. We're running good, man. It's like, I guess they didn't know how to start a conversation with anything else. Well, when you gonna win? Yeah. It's driving me crazy, driving us all crazy. We finally broke through at Rockingham in October of the year. It'd been a long time coming. I remember pulling into Victory Lane, and I've got pictures. I've got that car. Actually, that's JR10 that we got our first race win with. So we got our very first win with JR10 at Rockingham, 1989, October. Pull up in Victory Lane. My dad is there. He came from Arkansas for that race. I've got pictures. I've got that car on display at the museum in Batesville, and behind it is the Victory Lane photo, all blown up in behind the car. And I see Ryan Pemberton, teenage Ryan Pemberton, in the picture, and remember him, as the tire changer. And of course, Robin, there as well. And it was just such a major, major deal, because if you've listened to all these podcasts, especially starting back about 1981, you really get a feel. But all of them, if you listen to all of them, you really get a feel for how hard this has been for me. What a personal journey had been. The demons that I had to wrestle with after my failure in 1983, and losing my entire career, thinking that I'd never race NASCAR again, to getting back on my feet and winning a ASA championship again in 1986, and then having the opportunity to go Busch Series racing in 87, and having, success there, surprising success there, and then getting with Jack, and the journey with Jack. And 1988 was a very frustrating and challenging and difficult season for myself, as well as my team and all the guys. And then to be so close for so long, and it finally happened. We finally pulled it off. And it really, at that point in time, and I said it, in Victory Lane on television, like, my life is complete. Like, dude, nothing could ever have been so hard to do but to win a race, a NASCAR Cup race. I mean, it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe that I'd finally done it. So it was pretty special. But we didn't get out of Victory Lane before I started thinking about how we were going to be able to pull it off the next week as well. We were very consistent, started building really strong consistency. We did still blow up a lot of motors, but if we didn't blow up a motor, we were top 10 every race, top 5 a lot of races, had a lot of top 5s, tons of top 10s. We were sitting second in the points after that. Going into the end of the season, there's just a few races left after Rockingham, maybe Phoenix, and then Atlanta. So we came out of Phoenix in second in the points, and going into the final race of the season, second in the points. Not a shot at winning the championship. We're too far back, but we were second in the points. And I can't tell you what it meant to me to finish second in the points. And I remember, running good at Atlanta and blowing the motor and it catching on fire. And I mean, big on fire, huge flames coming out of the car when the motor blew, going down into turn 1. And because we had the DNF there, Rusty passed us in the points, and he got second in the points. And I was pissed. I'll be honest with you. I was pissed. I race to finish as high in everything as I can. And I was really pissed that we finished third instead of second in the points, because I race for winnings only. That's what I got paid for. And I spent my whole career scrapping, to make ends meet. And there was a considerable amount of difference in point fund money between the two, not to mention the prestige. So I was pissed. And of course, the thing we got out of Jack was, at least we went down swinging. And it's like, yeah, we should have went down without blowing up and catching on fire in the last race. It was pretty disappointing. But anyway, that kind of finished off our season for us. But it was really we really put the racing community on notice. It's pretty incredible for an upstart team in their second season to, perform the way we performed. And certainly, when we looked at 1990, at the end of '89, we looked at 1990. We knew that we were going to be a championship contender, and we had our sights on winning a championship. I don't really, I don't really remember a whole lot of any particular races. A lot of fun we had. We were really, really fast. We had a lot of fun with the Wood brothers. Loved Leonard Wood. He had become a fan of Leonard liked Jack from the very beginning, and was friendly with Jack, as opposed to Robert Yates being sort of an enemy of Jack's. So Leonard was always a lot of fun. He was a big fan of mine. He loves to tell stories about 1989 and, me being at Dover. And of course, everybody knows I love Dover. Dover's my favorite racetrack, and it was asphalt back then. And my car was just stupid fast. And, at that time, for some reason, I think maybe there had been sealer put on the racetrack or something, so your tires would smoke. And, that thing would just smoke the right front tire from the center of the corner off and just be all hauling butt all up in the gas. And Leonard's always funny telling that story. Leonard say, "Man, I remember that time at Dover, you was smoking that right front tire. And I said something to you about it, and you said, it feels good," and just laugh. We just have so much fun talking about stuff. And I know there were just so many good times with so many, crew people. It was just amazing to be considered, a top runner after all these years of fighting and, scratching and having the rug pulled out from under me, to be able to work with amazing people like Steve Meal and Robin Pemberton and Jack. Jack was teaching me. I was learning from Jack, even though the relationship with Jack was kind of it needed a lot of maturity. It was still pretty young. I was still pretty intimidated by him. And I knew that I felt that he always wanted to make sure that he kept me, from rising up. He didn't want he didn't want to have a driver that was that had, a lot of leverage. He was trying to make a race team work with really limited. He did have some money, but he was still trying to do it with a limited amount of money. He was trying to come from nowhere to championship contender in a short period of time with very limited amount of sponsorship and support. So he wanted to make sure that I never felt like I had much leverage on him, so that I could force him to pay me. I felt like he was always concerned about, my making money. You could tell he didn't want me. He knew that I was kind of on a little bit on Rusty Wallace's level. Rusty and I were buddies from all the way back in 1977 when we raced at Springfield, Missouri on Friday nights and all that stuff, and had come up through ASA and all that, all through there. And Rusty was enjoying a good career and making damn good money. and and getting, sponsors and personal services and endorsement deals and all those kinds of things. And, I was racing for nearly nothing at the time. I did finally in 1989, because I raced for, I think it was about 35% of the purse. I finally broke into the six figures for the first time. So, but I had I had competitors like Brett Bodine that were on salaries of six figures, and then 40 or 50%, 40 or 50% of the purse money. So, I at this time in 1989, I did not care about what I was getting paid. If you remember, I never asked Jack if he was even going to pay me when I made the deal in 1988 or in 1987 to drive for him in 1988. I was disappointed in what I made in 88. In 89, I was pretty satisfied because of that. I was realizing a dream, which was to be able to compete against Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip and Bill Elliott and Rusty Wallace and those guys, to be able to compete with those guys and challenge for wins and be in the mix for a championship, which brings me to another point. At this point in time, I was all about winning races. Prior to this, I was pretty much all about winning championships because those were what got me the recognition that I needed. They got me more recognition than winning races did. And so championships were really important. But by the time 1989 rolled around, man, I was just about winning a race. And so be driving for a team and a car that was in the mix for that every week was really exciting and really gratifying. And I just was really, really happy at this point in time in my career.
So tell us about, 6 poles that year. You said you put the world, the NASCAR world on notice, but 6 poles for a second.
Yeah, we were really, really fast. We were really good in the races too, but we weren't. We ran second a lot, and we ran top 5 a lot. We were still learning. I was still learning what the car needed to feel like in practice to be good at the 300, 400, 450 mile mark of a race. You can't teach that. No one can tell you that. You have to learn that through experience and feel, and then you have to learn from adjusting on the race car and making changes and seeing it just takes time to develop that feel and learn the tires and the cars. The cars were really heavy. They made no downforce. And so there was a lot of comers and goers in these races based on chassis setups. And I was still learning that. We were doing really good. We were, challenging for wins against the best in NASCAR, but we were still learning. We were really close to winning a lot of races, but just didn't quite get it done until October at Rockingham. So really, really fast. People were starting to take notice. And I was finally in a position where I felt like I had a shot. and that had been a long time coming.
Also, did some racing outside of NASCAR or Cup, Winston Cup. At that time, tell us about Rolex 24.
Yeah, so after Jack signed me, um, he asked me to come and do the 24 hours of Daytona. And, there are several reasons there. I'm suspicious that there were two motives on his side. One was to get to know me better. Two was to get me more experience in race cars, especially road race cars. And three, and I don't think that this should go unnoticed, was I was a free driver. And I'm telling you, Jack was frugal with what he spent. Now he would buy every set of tires you could ever need. You never wanted for tires or something like that. But he wasn't big on paying people. Um, he was big on putting that money into hardware, and so I went down and did the 24 hours. The first year in 1988. I got paired up with Deborah, Greg, and Lynn St. James. So uh, that was quite an experience. I remember not I remember one of the girls being in the car after my stint, and it starting to rain, and they ran and got me and said, "Jack wants you to come and get in the car," and I went to the pit. Jack said, "You're getting in next stop." And I'm like, "No, Jack, I've never driven in the rain." He said, "Yes, you are." And so that was it. So I rolled off a pit road on rain tires in the rain and had never been in the wet. And I was horrified. And it was the most fun I had ever had. Oh my God, it was so much fun driving in the rain. I had a ball. They almost had to drag me out of the car. But that I do remember. Um, then the following year, I think the following year I was paired up with a team that won. Now, when we talk about the 24 hours of Daytona, at that time you had the GTO class or whatever it was, the prototypes. And of course, those were the fastest cars. And then you had the Trans Am style cars, and Jack had won every single year that he had entered that, and he always took two cars. So the first year I went in '88 for him, we didn't win. The other car won. I think I don't remember who his drivers were, but in the second year I think I was paired up with the winning car, and Jack won that division. He went and participated 10 times and won 10 times. So every time he went, he won. The last time he went was in, I think it was 96. He only took one car, and that was with Paul Newman. And he planned on giving Paul Newman his 70th birthday present by winning the 24 Hours of Daytona. And we did win it. I was paired up with Tommy Kendall and Paul Newman and Michael Brockman, and we won it. I mean, we did, and that was an incredible experience to be able to work with those guys. But I had the opportunity to share cars and work with Robbie Gordon and Wally Dallenbach Jr. and Tommy Kendall, and a lot of great race car drivers. So that was a different experience for me to be able to go do the 24 hours. It was something that was totally foreign to me because I wasn't used to sharing a race car, and it was just a completely different feel as far as having four drivers for one race car and tag teaming a event, 24 hours event. But Jack brought some really bulletproof race cars, and he never He never lost one of those races.
Tell us about outside of you talked about the NASCAR year. If you go to YouTube and you search Mark Martin 1989, one of the clips that's most prolific is a flip at Sears Point. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. So this first year that NASCAR goes to Sears Point, we're running really, really good. We come in for a green flag stop, and Steve is wanting to kind of keep quiet his strategy, and he calls a gas only stop under the green flag. And so I wheel in there, get the gas. He says, go, go, go. And I leave. And as soon as I get off a pit road, I'm wide open, getting ready to start going up the hill. Well, Richard Malentine was a rear tire changer, and somehow or another, he didn't get the message. And so when the car came in and stopped, he ran around the car to the right rear and pulls the lug nuts off the right rear. Nobody else goes around the car, no jackman or anything. I leave the pit. Nobody says a damn word to me. Man, I start up there. As soon as I make that left hand off the pit road, start up that hill, the right rear flies off of it, and I spin like a helicopter and go off in the ditch over there and turn over. And, I'll be honest with you. I still see the Wood brothers at Darlington come in and going to do 4 tires. So the guys come around to the left side, take all the left side lug nuts off. And when the jack drops on the right side, Pearson drives off. Both left side wheels flew off the car, and he got fired the next week after he'd won 50 races or whatever it was in the Wood Brothers 21 car. So, the first thing I think of is, what did I screw up? How did I screw this up? I left in the middle of a tire change. What the hell did I do? I didn't know what the hell happened. So when I got out of the car, I ran all the way from the car to our pit to find out, because I wanted to know, man, if I screwed this thing up, I'm going to have to crawl under a rock. And I was still pretty insecure, probably afraid for my job. But moreover, just didn't ever want to be a guy who made a mistake or did something dumb. And I did plenty of dumb stuff, but I definitely didn't want to do dumb things. So at this point in my career, I didn't seem like I was habitual about doing dumb stuff. Like the further I get into my career, the more I become a habitual offender of the dumbass. So anyway, yeah, that's what happened there. The wheel flew off, and it was just a mistake. And I guess I don't know. I'm not sure. They didn't even tell me. I probably could have kept from turning over if I'd have known the wheel was going to come off, but they didn't say anything. And so anyway, the wrecker turns the car back over, and they get her back to the pits, and they pour some oil in it and put some tires on it, and I go out and finish the race. So that was the kind of grit and determination that our race team had.
So the next podcast that we're going to do, which would be episode 31, is going to be 1990. Now, in the past, you've touched that this is a benchmark year for your career. It's one that you're really excited to talk about. Let's give the fans a preview of the next podcast.
So we have now, won our first race with JR10, our Laughlin car, front steer car, and finished third in the points. And we definitely have a even more better foundation going into 90 than we had in 89. So everything is looking exciting. For 90, we're building all rear steer cars. I'm sorry, front steer cars, Laughlin chassis. So we're going to go into the 90 season with all the same chassis, all the same car under us. We've learned some things about bodies. We're making a little bit more downforce, but we're not onto it yet like we're going to get onto it going forward. So we come right out of the gate strong, and then we run into Richmond, the second race of the season. Man, it is cold there. It's snowing on race day. Dust, dusty snow. It's so cold that the snow doesn't melt. And this is the race where we get the 46-point penalty for the carburetor spacer infraction, and I'll go into great detail about that next week, and tell what I think happened and why I think things happened. It's only my opinion, but how I see things is what you're going to hear from me. That doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it the way it was, but it's how I saw things, and that's how I've done these podcasts. I'm doing them through my eyes. Try to be objective about it, but try to give my perspective, what I see, what I saw, what I perceive. And this is an epic year for me, one that I really thought wouldn't define me, but wound up, and it didn't, but it wound up setting the stage for intense pressure and frustration in the coming years. I took what happened with a grain of salt, moved forward, kept my chin up, kept going forward, and had no idea that it would probably be the closest that I ever got to winning a championship.
So we're going to leave the fans with that cliffhanger for the next episode, but this has been episode 30 of the Mark Martin Podcast, 1989 again. Hit the website, markmartinpod.com, markmartinpod.com. Get all of your links, old episodes. Make sure to subscribe and give us that 5-star rating.
Thank you for subscribing and listening to the Mark Martin Podcast. Remember to give us a 5-star rating in your app store. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Mark Martin POD. The Mark Martin Podcast is a production of the Accelerated Podcast Network.